Can everybody hear me? Is the sound good at the back of the room? Perfect, thank you. We acknowledge the long history of First Nations and Métis peoples in what we now call Ontario. The Chamber of Commerce respects the rich and vibrant culture of Indigenous people. We wish to honor the original people of Turtle Island as we recognize their homeland as a sacred and spiritual place known since time immemorial. In the spirit of partnership and reconciliation, we acknowledge that our business is conducted in primarily Northumberland County, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg, Huron-Wendat, Iroquois, Ojibwe, Chippewa peoples. This territory is covered by the Williams Treaty. We respectfully acknowledge that the Williams Treaty's First Nations have been stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and that today remain vigilant over their health and integrity for generations to come. My name is Brenda Whitehead, and I'm the CEO of the Port Hope District Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming and participating in the third of 3 Meet the Candidate nights that we've hosted this week. Joining us in the room is Siobhan Pusterhoff. She's the official stop sign lady in the front. Everybody wants to know who she is. She is our membership and community engagement lead at the Chamber. And sitting with her are 2 of our board members. We have Darlene Robertson from the Durham Region Association of Realtors and Rhonda Cook from Primitive Designs. So we also have a number of other people who are running for positions. We have 3 of our school board trustees. They're at the back of the room, and if they can stand when I say their names, that would be great. We have Jamie Manton-Byers, Jane Klassen-Janinga, and Terry Brown. Jane and Terry. Jane is there too. And they are the candidates for the public school board. We also like to take a moment and ask that any of the candidates in the room that are running for Ward 2, if you could please stand. We also have in the room a few of our mayoral candidates. If our potential mayors could please stand. Oh, all 4 of them are there. Sorry, I only saw 2 before, so thank you all for coming. As a Chamber of Commerce, we spend a lot of time advocating with different levels of government, the federal, the provincial, and of course our municipal. So we are beginning to create relationships with people that we will work with on behalf of the business community over the next 4 years. So we really do like to acknowledge and tell them how much we appreciate that they're wanting and willing to stand up and represent you as voters as well as the business community as a whole. Okay, I also just have a couple of housekeeping things. If everybody could make sure their phones are off or just on vibrate. It would be very distracting, especially with 10 candidates on stage, to have cell phones go and ring. I also want to issue a really quick thank you to Loki. I don't know if he's in the room or not. Yeah. At the top of the stairs. There he is. Loki fixed the sound system. So thank you to Loki for, being our technology whiz tonight. It's important that we have those, the people who understand which buttons and what knobs and stuff, because it wasn't us. I just also wanted to remind everybody that the Chamber of Commerce is committed to being the trusted voice of business for Port Hope. We represent close to 200 member businesses, but we work with the entire business community as advocates, as I talked about. As a business organization, questions that we ask tonight at this event, because it is hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, will focus on topics that relate specifically to the business sector. So it's things like growth, development, economics, agribusiness, and of course, quality of life. We have sent a set of questions to all of the candidates, and they have all provided answers. If you visit our website, porthopechamber.com, there's a button that says Municipal Election 2022, and all of their answers are there. So you can see a little bit more in depth some of those issues that we know are priorities based on our interaction with the business community. We also have 1 question each tonight that will be specific to those answers, that we're going to try and get some more information out of them ourselves so that we understand where some of their thought processes are. So thank you to them. Okay, The only other piece of advice I had was clapping is good, but we can't do a lot of it because it takes away from our time, right? We have 10 candidates here tonight that some of them they're going to be answering the same question one right after the other. The less interruption we have, the more questions we get to ask. Okay, so there you go. So clap now. Thank you, Mr. Gaffney. Right, thank you. The candidates will not be offended if you do not clap. They know that we're doing it to be speedy and get more questions asked, right? Nobody's offended if they don't clap. That was sort of a direction, not a... Sorry. Okay, we're going to get started. I have the honor of introducing our moderator for tonight. We've been very lucky that we've had 3 very different moderators for the 3 events that we've had. Tonight, our moderator is Jessica Dodd. Jessica is the owner and operator of the Beamish House Pub. She is a proud Port Hopian and is making a difference by working with other businesses in lots of different innovative and collaborative approaches. The Port Hops beer is something I can't wait to try. Oh, sorry. She is also the Secretary-Treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and I'm sure she'll do a fantastic job tonight of helping us get to know these candidates a little bit better. Without further ado, here's Jessica.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I've been coached by many of you. If I don't speak clearly, let me know. I'll slow down and make sure that you can hear the questions as they are being asked. So just wave your hand if I'm speaking too quickly. So before we begin, I would like to outline this evening's format and protocols will be the following. This is a candidates meeting, not a debate. Our purpose this evening is to get as many of the submitted and vetted questions answered as possible and for the candidates to articulate their policies, positions, and as clearly as possible with few interruptions. Answers are timed at 1 minute following the 2-minute opening statement. Only the moderator, that's me, will be asking questions. Please be respectful of the candidates. We ask that you keep your comments at bay. Your agreement or disagreement with the candidates or what is said tonight may be fully expressed when you mark your ballot on voting day. Please be advised that if any person requires 2 or more reminders, they will be asked to leave. There will be no questions directly from the floor. Opportunities to submit questions were provided through the chamber, and we thank those who took the opportunity to do so. The vetting committee has reviewed questions submitted as well as answers from the individual candidates to our questions. The committee may have combined or synthesized questions of similar nature into a single one. Given the audience and the purpose of the session, preference has been given to questions related to business, economics, and concerns of chamber business nature. If your question was not asked, reach out to your chamber or to the chamber, and they will help you get your answers answered with and connected with the candidates. So the order of response was drawn by the candidates and will be rotated. Each candidate should have the chance to be the first to respond. We're good? So you're up. Welcome, Claire.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight and for lending us your time and your ears as we get a chance to introduce ourselves to you this evening. My name is Claire Holloway Wadwani, and I am deeply invested in the future of our community. Port Hope is my chosen home. It's the place that my husband and I have chosen to raise our family because of the unique opportunities and lifestyle that Port Hope provides. And it's a place that I hope my children will want to stay and will be able to afford to stay and raise their own families one day. Now, one of my favorite things about Port Hope is the vibrant energy and community spirit that we have here as a community. You literally cannot go anywhere in this town without seeing evidence of how citizens, be they volunteers or business owners, are working every day to advance and enhance our community life. Now I want to see that same proactive energy reflected at the council table and in the way we make decisions together. and in the way that we provide services and programming in our neighborhoods. Now, I've spent the last 20 years working in community development all around the world, and I am truly inspired by what is possible when citizens and elected officials come together to advance their common goals. Now, I think it's time for us to do a better job here in Port Hope of working together. I want to take my skills and experience that I've developed through my career, including as an entrepreneur running my own consulting firm, and I want to apply them right here at home in Port Hope, because I know that by working together, we really can build the future that we all want for ourselves, for our children, and for our grandchildren. A future where we can all live, work, and thrive together. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Todd Atridge. I'd like to thank everyone who's involved in putting tonight together. I'm excited to be here. I think it's going to be a really great evening. I spent my whole life involved in business and community development. I started by getting a business degree from the University of Guelph, specializing in hospitality and tourism. I spent the first 2 decades of my career working in the tourism industry, having owned a restaurant in Toronto and a hospitality consulting business, and working as an executive at a number of national restaurant companies. I taught leadership and business skills at George Brown College. 10 years ago, I started my current company, Different Matters, serving companies across North America, brands like McDonald's and Pepsi, working with organizations like Princess Margaret Hospital, McMaster University, the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Here I help them improve their results by changing the way senior leaders engage their frontline people when making decisions and solving problems. We teach them how to communicate more openly and honestly. I'm considered to be an expert in changing organizations from using a father knows best approach by a few people knowing and making decisions to going to a much more collaborative approach where they reach out to their workforce and the people who are most close to the problems to get ideas from them. I think my expertise in business development, change management, tourism, and building cultures of inclusion and belonging will serve the community quite well. Outside of work, I'm also active in the community. I sit on the board of directors for the Cornerstone Family Violence Prevention Center. I'm currently the chair of Port Hope's Waterfront and Riverwalk Working Group. I'm the former chair of the Cultivate Festival, and prior to COVID shutting down our schools, I was involved with the Director of Education and our local superintendents, finding ways to increase our high school's enrollment numbers. Thanks very much, and enjoy the evening.
Thank you. I'm Terry Hickey. I have been on council previously, and I'm here tonight not only as a candidate, but I'm here as a voter. And I want to know, over the course of this campaign, and over the course of this evening, who are the people sitting here tonight to whom I'm going to give my trust for the next 4 years. Trust for me, 2 particular ingredients. Number 1 is being able to communicate. And I think that's been a problem here for a long time. I think it was a problem before I ran in 2014. It doesn't seem to have gone as far as we would like. My expectation of 4 of the people up here tonight, and the other 3 people will be on council, is that they spend a great deal of time out in the community sharing their thoughts with citizens here and getting feedback as to how you feel about it. We should know how this community feels about something before a decision is made. There's a lot to be said for the phrase management by walking around. It works. The second thing is knowledge. I think what we're looking at right now, what we've looked at for the past little while, is that there seems to be some confusion as decisions being made in the wisest course of action. It's incumbent upon every single councillor not only to understand each department within the community, but to have a profound, in-depth understanding of the portfolio for which they're responsible. I did that in great depth when I was with Works in Engineering. We had several projects on the go, And that took a great deal of understanding of communication with other communities and a number of other citizens to figure out what it is we were going to do and present a plan that actually works. And I'll conclude with one thing. We have 4 people here, 4 years, and over $100 million that we're going to be looking at. I earned your trust in the past, and I look forward to it again.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for putting this together. My name is John Oppelman. I grew up out in Welcome. I was educated at Fleming College. I spent 30 years on the road, which I wasn't really on the road, but I spent 30 years learning from other communities and things that I think we can do better here in Port Hope. Everyone's going to touch on communication. I was able to... You need to put the mic closer. Sorry. Oh, is that better? My bad. Should I start over? Thank you. Anyways, I've spent my life working in organizations and groups. I've put together a team of over 1/3 of my fellow employees and convinced them to climb the CN Tower just for fun and raise money for a charity. So it's just a kind of infectious type of personality I have. I really want you to know that I care deeply about Port Hope, and I really want everybody involved in its future. And that's really all I need to say. Thank you.
Good evening, Port Hope. My name is Will Lambert. I'm running from Ward 1. I'm a 23-year resident of Port Hope, and this is my chosen home. Born and raised somewhere else, but chose Port Hope because of all the beautiful things that we all love about this town. So I ran for Ward 1 Council in 2018 and finished 5th, so just out of the running. But I've decided to try again because I really believe that I can make a difference. I have 41 years of public service experience. I'm a college-trained fish and wildlife technician who worked 6 years with the Ministry of Natural Resources before changing my career to firefighting, and I've completed 35 years with Toronto Fire Service, where I retired as a captain recently. While I was on the fire service, I was also involved in creating our stewards program. And that's important for you to know. I was a chief steward for over 10 years with Toronto. It's important for you to know because stewardship, I think, is very much like being a counselor, in that it involves being a two-way conduit for communication. I took my executive's message to the members, and I took my members' gripes and complaints back to the executive. And I think that a counselor needs to be able to do the same thing. He needs to inform you, find out what your opinions are, and take them back to the table. As well as my professional career, since moving to Port Hope, I've been very involved in the community, over 20 years of community work. I did 12 years with Beyond the Blue Box on their board of directors. I ended up as the chair, and although I'm not on the board now because of term limits, I'm still a volunteer with that organization. I also did 10 years with the Canadian Firefighters Museum, wound up as the chair of that board as well, and I'm still a volunteer with them. I'm just finishing up my 4 years on the library board, where I've twice been involved in contract negotiations, and I'm out of time, so I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody, and first of all, happy belated Daughter's Day and a happy Son's Day, because we are all one or the other. My name is Les Andrews. Currently, I'm your deputy mayor, have been since 2018. Prior to that, I sat as a councillor from 2014 to 2018. The reason I got into municipal politics was when I had retired from my McDonald's, which I had run for 25 years. I had about a month of retirement, decided that retirement was not for me, and I had a look at the financial statements of the municipality of Port Hope at the time, and they were, quite frankly, a disaster. There were years and years of uncollected taxes. We were financially in kind of dire straits, and lo and behold, I was elected, We worked on the financial problem for a couple years, thank you, through our finance department, and we corrected the problem, and I'm happy to say that although we're not a rich community, we are in pretty darn good shape. So we should take solace in that. In the future, the next councillor is going to have to delve into and resolve some of the issues that have not been completed by the current council. And they include, of course, the Walton Street rebuild, CNL cleanup, the Victoria Street wood lot problem. That is going to be coming before the OLT next year. So there's a number of initiatives, the Riverwalk Working Group, that have to be completed. I'm not afraid to voice my opinion. I've stood up with people and against council on at least 2 occasions. One was long-term care, where we could have had a long-term care facility handed to us. And we decided that building was more important than people.
Les,
But
that's time.
I will turn the mic over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you to the Chamber. So my name's Adam Pearson. I own Queenie's Bake Shop downtown, and looking around, I know a lot of the faces out here, so it's nice to see everybody. Most people know me as I am a community individual. I am out and about in the community very frequently, as well as organizing events that try to help our community and bring us joy. I try to get to almost every event that we have, and very supportive in the community. I'm also an environmentalist, in case you didn't know, and actually just coming up this weekend, I'm organizing up some volunteers to clean up the river after the fishing season's over. So at 4:45 at Queenie's Bake Shop, if you want to show up and help out, that'd be awesome. So most people already know I'm big into the community and everything, but I'm also a business owner. So I've owned a very successful business downtown Port Hope for over a decade. Thank you. Before that, what I used to do is I used to go into restaurants that were failing, and I would turn them around and I would make them profitable again. So I've done that for 13 different businesses in my career. These are the things that I bring to the table for our next council, if elected. I work well with staff. I have a good relationship with my staff. As you can see, even some of my staff is here tonight. And those are the type of things that make everything go further. If the staff, who does a lot of the work for us, is happy with their jobs, they tend to do well with our residents, and we can get more accomplished. So over the course of the next 4 years, if elected, that is what I'm going to be working on a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting on this event and allowing us all to get together. Also, I'd like to thank you people for showing up, and I want you all to vote for me, of course. So, can we do that tonight? All right, my name is Norm Orvis. A bit about myself. I grew up in Cobourg. It's always been my plan to come back to this area at this time in my life. I have played many sports. I was reminded by a couple of people here how badly I played basketball in this very room. So thank you for remembering that. My parents were very active members of the community, and they taught me that volunteership is what we need to be. We need to always look out for each other. We always need to look out for each other. Oh, there, I sound better. They, for many years, volunteered at the hospital and at the Golden Plough. I've been married for over 40 years. We were married when we were 6. I have 7 wonderful grandchildren and 2 children of my own. So my interests range across a wide variety of groups. My work history is in operations, so I have been deeply involved in managing businesses, multi-tiered businesses, and I look at Port Hope or Council as a multi-tiered industry. And we need to be able to work across all of the groups and get them all working in one direction. Okay, I'm running for council because I want to be the voice of you people here. I also want to help some of the service delivery issues. I understand and I've read many of the reports that have been put out, and I'd like to take them off the shelf and actually
Norm, that's
implement
time.
them.
Thank you. Check, check. Hi, my name is Miranda Lukanyuk. So don't worry about how you pronounce my name. I'm not sure I pronounce it right myself. This is my first time infiltrating the system by running for council. And I'm really excited about it, and I'm also really scared and nervous, just like everyone else here. But I think that I could do a good job because there are a couple of things that I got myself into in this town that a lot of my friends and neighbors told me that were pretty clever and that maybe I should get more involved. Like the first Indigenous acknowledgement that was made in the council chambers. Remember that, Les? And also bringing attention to the West Beach with the beautiful art installation, just to name a few. But my past is, I've always been raised to pay attention to democracy. Even before the age I was able to vote, I worked for Elections Canada. I was always interested in politics, but my family wanted me to go into film and to be an actress. And I was like, no, family, I want to be a scientist or a lawyer and save the world. And my father said, no, Miranda, you'll ruin your life, you'll end up in jail. And he was right, because I ended up getting a job for Greenpeace. But I think that's about it for about me talking about myself. I think that I will calm myself and give you guys an opportunity to clap along and give you a little intro to my night tomorrow night at the Beamish, if you show up. I'm gonna sing a part of my campaign song. Are you ready? You can sing along too, Adam, okay. If I get elected, I promise I'll be good. If I get elected, I'll do all the things I should, but don't ask me to answer for the things I do at home. I'll make sure all your lights turn on and your garbage bags are gone.
That's a tough act to follow. Hi, I'm Miles. I would like you to know about me that I'm a builder, a volunteer, and a dad in this community. And I'd also like you to know that I'm not an economist. You should know this because it informs how I see and build community. I see people first, and I pursue projects that strengthen connections and generate stories. My work in Port Hope has been about our stories, how we keep them and pass them on, and who gets to tell them, and how we share them with others. Growing up in Saskatchewan, I learned that Toronto tends to dominate the discourse, and I often wondered why rural stories are forgotten or laid to the side. But something that I've learned living in Port Hope is that our stories matter. Rural stories matter as much as any other. We're interesting, inventive, irreverent, and relevant. And people want rural stories. It's why they keep trying to move here. I've also learned that our stories make money. Over the course of my last 4 years working in this community, I've brought in $750,000 in grant money for nonprofits that have generated over 40 jobs in the arts sector and 6 Trillium grants and a major tourism grant. This has resulted in 4 citizen awards, but more importantly, a whole lot of culture creation. We work on projects with the teams that I work with to create jobs and show off our town. It brings in and keeps money in our local pockets, and it builds pride for living in this incredible community of Port Hope. Importantly, my approach means funding other people and developing their talent. I bring a different approach to building the economy of Port Hope's cultural commerce.
Thank you, Miles.
I want to thank all of the candidates for their introductions. If we want to pass the mic down, I believe, Todd, you get to address the first question. All the candidates will have an opportunity to address the first question. You'll have 1 minute. So the first question is, it's often said that small business is the backbone of a community, and here in Port Hope, that is particularly true. What's your view on how the municipality can support small business to ensure their footprint continues to grow?
I think as far as we get involved with small business, what the municipality has to do is actually, the smallest things, take an interest. We actually have to reach out to the people on Walton Street, and as we go into something like the reconstruction of Walton Street, how do we make sure that they're going to survive during the reconstruction? We need to reach out and ask them, how can we support you? How can we make sure that your businesses can be accessed? How can we make sure that you are going to be around in 2 years? One of the challenges that goes fast. One of the challenges that we have, I think, is that we often allow the small businesses just to operate without taking much interest. We wait for them to come forward and say, hey, we've got a problem, instead of reaching out and keeping that communication open so that we can always keep their lights on. And it's something that we're really going to have to do over the next couple of years.
Having visited a lot of the retailers downtown, a lot of the same comments came into play, and mostly people there wanted to know what was going on. They wanted to be kept informed. Obviously, and I'm going to agree with you, Todd, the big dig is going to be an issue, and people will have to be taken care of. We're necessarily going to have one person who is going to be able to liaise between the community and all of retailers to keep that communication open, active, and caring. If we don't do that, that will be trouble for everyone. And we also need to take a look at communication in general. How can we, given all the technology we have, we still haven't been able to reach out to all the people to whom we need to reach out so they can understand what's going on, when it's going on, and what is the impact to their business.
Okay, my idea to help small businesses in Port Hope is to get them to tell me what I can do for them, and so that we can build a team atmosphere, something similar to what Jess is doing with some of the downtown business. I think that we can all thrive by working together, and I think that the community business has a voice, and I think that councillors need to listen to it better. I think that everything is better if we work together, and we'll be stronger.
So I'd agree, communication is a problem. I think one of the biggest problems for our small business in Port Hope is the constant disruption of their business. And whether it's the PHAI cleanup with road closures and dirt and trucks and so on moving around town, or the Walton Street reconstruction, or if it's a film crew that happens to be in town, which is great for some businesses but may close streets and be bad for other businesses, just the constant disruption to their business is a problem. So communication and ending the disruption. The other thing I would remind everybody is that small business isn't only downtown. There are small businesses, home businesses, agribusinesses, and so on throughout the Ward 2 as well, and beyond the Heritage District downtown. And so we need to be mindful of that, and we need to promote, and we need to help those people advertise, and we need to publish a directory that has good maps and good contact information, because people can only support those small businesses if they can find them. Thank you.
What the businesses currently have going for them is outstanding customer service, and that's a product of being in a small town, knowing your customers and your customer base. The biggest impediment that businesses have is the inability to market themselves professionally. And I would suggest that resources be provided so that businesses can contact professional marketing people to help them along the way of helping to develop and market their businesses effectively. The second thing is that along the same lines, is that this is the era of mass media marketing. In the old days, McDonald's was not successful until they brought TV advertising in the 70s. Today's mass media is more social marketing and internet marketing, a la the Amazons of the world. And our businesses need the advice to help them look more professional on those platforms. Gotcha.
So, as a business owner in the downtown, I think I kind of have a grasp of this one. So really what the municipality can do best for small businesses, keep our roads clean, make us accessible, keep our trails clean and allow tourists to come in. That is what helps us the most. Of course, having a little bit of communication, like let's say our downtown construction, I would bet that most people in here right now don't know what the actual plan is, myself included. And these are the issues with the communication, and that's what will really help. The next part is there's a little bit of red tape when you try to do something. So when you try to get an event going that can help your business out, it's very difficult to get those things done. Part of the reason why I'm running right now is to try to get on the other side of that and maybe break down some of those barriers to allow us to actually get our events done and help our businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe the town needs to market itself better. That's number one. And that would help all business in every area. If you take the example of Clarington, they run a program that they're running right now that is farms, it's businesses, it's towns itself, it's closing down streets and having street festivals. We need to see more of that in the town to help the businesses out. And I don't disagree, we do need communication. The council needs to communicate better with all the business owners on what's happening and how long this process is going to take, because it seems to be taking a very long time.
Every single idea that I've heard along this line, I 100% agree with. The one that I haven't heard was, I just started a business a couple of years ago, and the HBIA and the Chamber of Commerce have been amazing for me, because I'm not a business that's sitting on Walton Street. I'm an at-home business that's not visible in the community, unless a film production comes in town. But I think that the municipality should also support the HBIA and the Chamber of Commerce to help businesses as well. And the other thing I noticed when I walked around looking for sponsors for my birthday charity event, I noticed, when talking to all the different businesses, sort of the culture, and I found sometimes there wasn't so much unity with all of the different businesses. I think we need to figure out some kind of strategy to bring unity for the at-home businesses, the Walton Street businesses, and everyone to sort of work together as a community.
Thanks. A bunch of really great ideas already, so I don't think I need to repeat, but to highlight, listening to what business owners want, being solution-focused, and improving marketing, those are all going to help. I want to talk about something else that we haven't yet broached, which is housing. I just spent the last week working in Tim Hortons as part of the Smile Cookie campaign, and I'll tell you that none of the people I worked with live here. There are no affordable houses for the people that serve us coffee and that cut our hair and that run our downtown shops. We are running out of a supply, and we need an approach that starts to prioritize building a stock of rentable houses and bringing in new and innovative ways of building homes as well that are affordable and that allow people to live, stay, and work in this community.
Hi, thank you. I think it's really important that we recognize that small businesses are, in fact, citizens in our community and important stakeholders. They're providing us with the services and the goods that we need here in our community, and we need to recognize that and work with them more collaboratively as a municipality. I think that we need to work together to make sure that their needs are understood and met, and who better to tell us that than them themselves. This is not something that we at this table should be deciding, but rather we should be listening We should also be leading by example and frequenting our small businesses, not just the ones on Walton Street, but also those adjacent to Walton Street in our downtown and out in our neighborhoods as well, so we understand who they are, who they serve, and what they want so that they can be successful and thrive as part of our local economy.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question, Terry, you get the honors of answering first. So, as the voice of our members, as the voice of our members, and as the largest business organization in the area, the Port Hope and District Chamber of Commerce frequently hears about the cost of doing business in our community, delays with permits, miscommunication with planning issues, lack of communication on major projects. Essentially, building and expanding business in Port Hope can be frustrating. So what do you see or have you heard is the biggest barrier to building and or developing, and how would you tackle that?
Thanks for the full minute to do that. I think what it all boils down to in the end is a very simple thing. I think that regardless of what department you contact, and particularly planning and development, the first question that anyone there should ask you is, how can I help? And that's not a question we hear enough, or sometimes at all. There has been a survey done with respect to economic development and planning. There have been recommendations made, and they're very good recommendations, and hopefully they will be followed. But at the end of the day, when people come into Port Hope, be they want to build a house, a business, whatever, the first thing they should do is be welcomed. The first thing after that is acknowledged, and the third thing is helped.
It has been clear to me since I returned to Port Hope over 8 years ago that it seems to be way too difficult to do almost anything other than watch paint dry. I want to work with the staff that we have in town, because I can tell you I've worked with a lot of them and we have great staff. We just have to find a way to make it easier and, as everybody says, more customer friendly. That's what I see as being the biggest stumbling block, is everybody feels that they're not being encouraged to move forward. They're sort of being forced to stay as they are, and I don't see that as a way of making a way forward.
So I'm not a business person, other than running a very small antique business on the side. However, I have very similar experiences to what Terry just mentioned in running festivals and events in town, where the customer service is lacking, and there is not an emphasis on how can we help you make this happen, how can we help you make this a success, but there are lots of rules thrown up about rules and roadblocks about what you must do and what you cannot do and why this can't work. So we need a more positive approach, and I think I will give you the credit, Terry. I think you nailed it. It's how can we help needs to be the first question.
By its very nature, the staff on in the municipality is born, bred, and brewed in bureaucratic process. That is the nature of their business. It is up to us as councillors and the mayor's job to provide a shadow of a leadership that they can follow so they can understand we're here to do business, not to do procedure.
So I think I've already kind of touched on this, how difficult it is to get things done in the municipality when you're trying to put something on as a business. But we actually have wonderful staff. I don't know if you've met very many of the staff in the planning department or building department. We do have great staff. We just don't have enough. We need to hire some more so that we can get things accomplished. Also, having a plan on all the different things that are required before you submit your application is something that is vital to us. So if I already know that these are the 25 things that I need to get done to put on whatever it is or to do whatever I'm doing with my business, and I check off every single one of those things before I submit it, I need to get a yes on it. If I do something wrong on it, that's when it can go back. But too frequently, we submit 2 or 3 items to get it back, and then we have to change something. Then we submit 2 or 3 more items before we get to change things again. Having a solid plan would be beneficial for us. Thank you.
Yeah, breaking down some of the process and breaking down some of the barriers to getting things done would be a great idea. I think the staff has been wonderful, but I'll tell you, I have my own experience. I'm trying to get a permit for a deck. This is not rocket science. It's been 2.5 months now, and they just lost all the paperwork, and I have to resubmit it. So, like these things can't continue to happen. There has to be a more defined process, like you said. You have to define that process, and you have to let people follow through on that process. And if it's all done, then just stamp it approved. Thank you.
I'm a fiercely independent person, and sometimes I'm afraid to ask for help because I think I can do it all myself. And I was putting on an event called Port Horror Festival. It was a horror film festival, and I didn't know that I could approach the municipality for help with that. In fact, somebody wanted me to get into the office with some municipal staff about it. I thought I was in trouble when I showed up to that meeting, and I kind of was, but then it ended up, at the end, I got some help. So what I get from that experience is that I think that we also need to be more approachable as a municipality for businesses, that it's an open door that you feel that you can walk into as a business when you're planning something or want to do something in town, that it's friendly and approachable.
So I referenced before my past in grant writing, and I think that our planning applications should look something like that. You can create portals where people know all of the steps and all of the documents that they have to submit, and you can put that so that you can have clearly laid out guidelines, and you can follow along with the progress of your grant or your planning application so that you could understand, oh, this is coming up. It should be something that you could log into and track as you move along, and it should be transparent from the start so that you understand what barriers you have to get over in order to be able to be successful with your application. Second step, I think a number of my cohort here have already identified the yes and approach, which is to actually help people. In the planning department, they should be guides to shuttling you toward completion rather than closing doors in your face. And so yes, it's about how can I help, but also about successfully ushering people to the completion of whatever they've applied to.
I think I'd like to push that how we can help concept a little bit further, because I think helping implies that this is almost a favor that we're doing to benefit someone else. I don't think that's the case. I think we need to recognize small businesses as partners in advancing our community's priorities. When a small business succeeds, it creates jobs. When a small business succeeds, it helps keep families in our community and keep our community vibrant. When small businesses succeed, they attract visitors to our community, and they attract new entrepreneurs to come and invest and set up shop here as well. So I'd really like to push us to be thinking not about helping small businesses, but how can we work with small businesses to advance our community and to help build a sustainable and thriving local economy.
So there's something about being the anchor, right? So I'm going to go even further than that. Because I think what we really need to be doing is seeking out opportunities for our small businesses. We have access to so many different venues, grants that are on the horizon. We know in advance the different business opportunities, the industries that are coming. We know in advance of closures. We know in advance, like we have the foresight as a town to be able to take what we know and reach out to the community and say to these small businesses, here's some opportunities we want to bring forward to you, who's interested in them. The portals, the transparency and process, absolutely, I agree with all that. No one should have to dig around trying to find out how to get things done just to have a livelihood. But on top of that, how do we enhance their livelihood so they can make even more money instead of letting them figure it out for themselves?
Thank you. We now have some individual questions for each of the candidates. So we are going to begin with John. You have 1 minute to reply. So when considering how the municipality can support business, you mentioned you would work with them to promote them. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I would first want to talk with a wide range of the businesses and get a feel for what it is exactly they want the municipality to help them with. I think that the businesses in our town know what they're doing, and I want to be the conduit to help them branch out and expand into larger markets. I think we should have more festivals. I think we should have more fun. I think that we should celebrate everything Port Hope in some way or other and make it a better tourist attraction than it is, if that's possible. The main thing I want to do is work with the businesses, and that's how I would do it.
Thank you. The next question for Will. You mentioned expanding economic development to include arts, culture, and events as businesses. Can you give us an example where embracing these organizations will be a benefit to the larger business community over the long term and not just as one-offs?
Okay, sure. We have some successful examples already, and I'm thinking of a place like Goat, where we were for the Board 2 meeting the other night. This is, to me, not a traditional business that most people would think of, but I would branch it out even further into festivals. When, if any of you have been around long enough, when Port Hope Festival was happening, my wife and I co-chaired the event, and it was moderately successful, but it attracted tourists, it brought in dollars. The problem was it didn't bring in enough volunteers. And so it died a natural death after 3 years for the lack of volunteers. This is the area where I think that we should be looking, non-traditional business opportunities, because they have spin-off benefits to our local small businesses. And if we're honest about it, our local small businesses support the tax base to a great degree, and they pay for everything that we need and want. So we need to do what we can to support them.
Thank you. Les, as an incumbent, you listed 10 topics the upcoming council will have to deal with. One you mentioned was optimizing our public transit system. Can you share your personal vision of what that looks like in Port Hope?
We have 2 buses running around town, virtually the same routes. They all meet up at Town Hall a couple times a day at the same time, which I think is very counterproductive. If we go to a dial-a-bus system for one of the buses and get the other bus operational in the rural community on the same basis, I think it would make much more sense. And if we have to add a 3rd bus, that's not a big deal. We don't make money on transportation, and we don't expect to make money on transportation services. But it is a service that has been grandfathered in, that we supply, and if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam. When asked about the biggest issue facing businesses, you talked about the downtown and Walton Street reconstruction. Can you tell us the biggest issues for the entire business community and how you would address it?
Okay, so probably the biggest issue for the entire business community, not just including the downtown, unfortunately comes back to the planning department, and I'm not trying to pick on the planning department. but they are a very important part of the business sector as well. They have a very big job. So I have a friend that built like a $6 million business here in Port Hope. And he's trying to build another place here in Port Hope. Another large place that is going to be bringing in many very high-paying jobs to town. And it comes down to the same situation where every time he submits his plans that he's paid tens of thousands of dollars for architects to do, it comes back to him where he has to make slight modifications, and then he sends those in. These are taking years for him to get done. More than just him, there's many businesses that have the same problem. We need to get over that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Norm, It's All Right Here has been a Shop Local campaign over the last year supported by the Chamber of Commerce. You indicated that more of a push for Shop Local and Shop Online could be supported by the town. Can you give us a greater example or an idea of how the municipality can actually support this initiative?
Yes, I will. Thank you for that. I think right now what we're suffering from is that everybody has a hangover from COVID. They sat at home for 2 years and they bought everything online. We need to, as a municipality, in order to expand the business group within our town, we need to help them become accessible and help them find the products that people are buying online. And no yellow card, please. And we need to build a marketing plan for the businesses that are here. We need to keep the existing business, we need to find some new business, but we also need to teach them how to construct an online business to compete with some of the bigger companies that are out there.
Thank you. Miranda, you're very clear in sharing your dedication to representing the public and what they want. How will you, over the next 4 years, ensure you're in touch with the community needs?
I will spend more time in Port Hope. I do a lot of things with my life. I work in film, and the reason I started my business as a talent agent is so that I could be home more, because it's a digital business. And I put that in place as well, to help myself enjoy Port Hope. That's why I moved here. So spending every minute of time that I do have spare, I do something in the community, I make an event, or I get involved in an event. So that's how I would do that.
Excellent, thank you. Miles, you mentioned needing a much stronger digital strategy to draw from other communities and stop tourism dollars from driving by to hit the neighboring Prince Edward County. What's your #1 idea for how we can keep the dollars here and make this happen?
I think you just said it, like an actual digital strategy. Listen, like people are literally driving by us to go to Prince Edward County, and I've heard from so many people that it's just a little bit too long. So you know what's shorter? Stopping here. I've already highlighted that culture creation is a great way to bring them in here, and so tying a digital marketing strategy to our very abundant wealth of culture creation will give them reasons to come to Port Hope often. We have to highlight, the Salmon Run and the Cultivate Festival, etc., and actually tie those events to coming and staying and shopping and eating in Port Hope. So distributing all of those local businesses as part of the package that goes out when we push that to literally the 4th biggest city in North America, only an hour away. Let's get some of their money.
Thank you. Okay, Claire, you spoke very strongly about the business community and its organizations being treated as partners to the municipality to advance community priorities. Give us an example or vision you have that will help this come to life and make it easier for businesses to do that here, to do business here.
I guess they knew what I wanted to talk about, but I feel like I've already answered that question in my previous answers. So I think tangibly, let's look at what's happening in the downtown right now. We have businesses that have been struggling due to COVID. We have businesses that are already struggling a little bit because of the existing Walton Street construction. We have businesses that are, I think, rightly fearful of what the impacts of the subsequent phases of that Walton Street construction are going to be on their livelihoods. And I am appalled to think that we have not yet even sat down at the table with them. I hear stories of different pockets of local businesses coming together to try to advocate to the municipality. That is the wrong direction. We need to be reaching out, and we need to be sitting down and convening together to make sure that what happens in our community and what happens in our local economy is taken in a comprehensive way. And you'll never know what I was going to say.
Thank you. Todd, you mentioned aligning Port Hope's identity for working together to address social, environmental, and economic priorities through grassroots initiatives. Can you share with us a specific idea or example you have to make this a reality?
Yeah, I think when we look at some of the opportunities that we have in our industry, one of them is ecotourism and agritourism. And there are lots of people who have interest in this, and some of them are in Ward 2, some of them are in Ward 1. And in order to get this started, we need to be able to go out and have those conversations. If we're going to be able to do agritourism, we have to be mindful of the fact of where we would put it. And I've gone out and recently talked to folks who are out in the rural area, and we keep thinking if we're going to do agritourism, we want to do it out there. And when I speak to them, the people are saying, well, no. In fact, what we want is we want clear roads so that we can be able to get our goods back to market. So as we get into the grassroots of things, we have to make sure that we're reaching out to the people who are interested in doing agritourism. We could do, and we could do it along Lakeshore. We're already starting to look at some of those properties, but we have to make sure that we start with people out.
Thank you.
That's stop sign.
Okay. The next question is for Terry. Your statement that Port Hope leans heavily on homeowners to drive revenue was followed by the challenge of bringing new industry or commerce here. Can you identify an idea or thought you have and how we can jump in to make this happen?
Certainly. I think, as I mentioned before, we did a survey with respect to economic development. It's one of those situations where we can no longer dip our toes into the pond. We have to jump in full force and swim our way to success. I think if we have a proper plan, we can make this happen, but right now we don't have that strategy. And as we develop that strategy, we'll be able to move forward quickly, efficiently, and deal with every aspect of what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is to all of the candidates. We'll start with Will. So the tourism industry has been particularly hit hard over the last couple of years, and now that we're in the recovery stage, and we find ourselves continually facing challenges such as labor shortages, with the importance of tourism to this region, how do you see the municipality supporting this sector over the next 4 years?
So in talking to a number of local businesses, one thing that I heard quite often was that promotion of tourism in this area seems to have dried up in recent years. So we need to get our head back in the game. We need to realize that this is important. I've talked to people at the doorsteps who don't think that tourism is a good idea. There are actually folks out there who don't believe that we should let people know that we have a beach. They don't want people coming from Toronto to use this beach. But tourism is vital to our local small businesses. And as far as ways that we can improve it, we are really behind the 8 ball, I feel, right now because of the disruptions that are going on in town with the radioactive waste cleanup, with the Walton Street construction and so on. But the only way to tackle it is head on, and we have to advertise. We have to advertise to the major markets, which is the Toronto market. Those people are close enough, and we have things that they value that they would come here to see.
than try and solve that question and that problem, I think I'd rather use an example. Les Andrews, who are you? Nice to meet you. Prince Edward County built their whole economic development strategy on a grape. The grape led to wine, the wine led to a wine industry, the wine industry led to increased tourism, new restaurants coming in, new hotels being built, people residing in town. Some of the tourists became permanent residents. And we could do the very same with one product, garlic. And I probably don't have enough time to explain myself, but China is the biggest exporter of garlic. They do $45 to $60 billion a year in garlic. Garlic generates $10 revenue per square foot. So that should be of interest to us.
Thank you, Les. It's time.
Well, honestly, Les just said what I was going to say. I thought garlic. So tourism is huge for our community and always has been. And yes, COVID kind of cut down our tourism. Thankfully, and I'm downtown, I understand what our tourism is like, and we're busy again. Tourism is back. Come downtown right now and tell me that it isn't. There's tens of thousands of people down here every week now. Doesn't mean it can't get better. We can always improve. Now, our tourism department is very, very, very small right now, which I believe is only one person in our tourism department. One person can't get that job done. We actually need to probably rebuild our tourism department back up. Yeah, for the last 2 years, we didn't really need a tourism department, but we do now. As COVID is starting to, I realize it's back up again, but we're coming near the end, I'm hoping. We need to get more tourism in. It helps all of our business. Thank you.
Yeah, I think tourism goes hand in hand with economic development. And I believe that those two departments should be joined together. Economic development and tourism needs to work in one direction, and that's to bring people to the town and support all of our businesses. I believe that we need to have some stronger marketing around that, and I think economic development and tourism can move us towards that. And that probably means a few more festivals on weekends. It probably means some closing down of the street so that it becomes a walkway. It's a marketplace as opposed to a construction zone.
"11 years ago, when I moved here from Europe, I had to restart my life here in Port Hope. My son was like 4 years old, and the first thing I did was I got a job downtown at Nearly New at that shop. It's kind of like a pawn shop, not really. And I got to know everybody right away, but I also got to know what it's like for businesses in the winter. And there's no tourism in the winter, but there are places that do have tourism in the winter, and we've never examined this because there's a lot of times they had to send me home early because you couldn't pay me for the rest of the day because there's no sales. The other thing is, of course, the film industry brings a lot of iconic movies to shoot here, which draws people to Port Hope, just like that mural on the side of the wall and all the IT fans. And I have a one-up on you, Les. Pumpkin oil. $20 for half a liter. We can grow tons of pumpkins out there. Tourists will come to see it.
Okay, so I would ask the question, why tourism? Why do people do the tourism thing? And it's because of placemaking. Placemaking happens because of culture creation. And so the space that I've already told you about is the space that I'm loving that this question came from. A number of the grants that I have successfully brought to our community are the result of a huge wad of cash that people are dangling out there for people to just correctly apply for. And we're not applying for it here. I just looked at the recent Trillium announcements, and I don't see any in our community. That means that we are not prioritizing as a community how to apply for grants that bring in jobs and culture-based stability. Over the weekend, a couple of people and I put together Mayor Bob's idea of illuminating the train trestles, and we were able to apply for a tourism grant for $100,000. That was successful. Those things only happen when we as a community stand up and say, we want to follow these projects.
You should know that this answer is 100% drawn from consultations and conversations I've had with local business owners recently, including this smart lady back here. That's just something up to the moderator. I think when it comes to tourism, I think we need to do a better job of co-promoting all of the fantastic reasons to come to Port Hope, including cultural events and festivals. I think we need to do a better job of cross-promoting so that when people come here in June, they know all the excellent reasons to come back in July and August and September and so forth. I think we also need to make sure that we have our local businesses at the table when we are planning our tourism initiatives to make sure that we are integrating plans for driving traffic to our local businesses when visitors are here for other reasons. I would also like to say I'm personally really excited about the IT Tour, which is a new initiative. There's information about that at the tourism office right now.
Right, so for tourism to thrive, there has to be two things. There has to be a reason for people to come, and then of course there has to be marketing of those reasons. I think we've got some wonderful reasons for people to come. Unfortunately, they're often disjointed. We have festivals, we have arts, we have all sorts of wonderful things going on in the community. We're not necessarily getting that out. There are tourism boards in Ontario, there are agencies across Ontario that we can be a part of. Adam, you're right, like our tourism department is very small right now, so we do need to beef that up. But if we can take all these disjointed reasons for coming to Port Hope and put them together as one great package and market and brand Port Hope as the place to be and the reason to be here, and then get out to those agencies in Ontario so that they're promoting them in their communities so we can get the buses and the tourists here, we'll start seeing tourism thrive very quickly.
Ditto. I think what a lot of us are trying to get at is the fact that for tourism to thrive, we have to have a focus. I'm sure a lot of you remember when Port Hope was known for antiquing. So there was a focus. People came to Port Hope for antiquing, they did other things while they're here. We have a phenomenal arts community. Miles, you know this better than anybody. But we need to put these people together rather than in silos. We need them to work together to be able to present an entire artistic framework to the large marketplaces. So when they come here, they may come here for art, they may come here for theater, and they may come here for both at the same time. Let's get a strong focus, and yes, we would have to beef up the tourism department to be able to do that, but focus is key.
Well, you don't really need my ideas, you just heard all these great ideas. With my overall plan of including everybody in decision making, I think that we can create a plan, market it better to the outside, bring people in when we have a plan of how we want to bring the tourists in as a team. I don't think that it's an easy solution, but I think that having a plan and marketing that plan will lead to great tourist success for us. Thank you.
Thank you. As someone who has a business in the tourism industry, I look forward to seeing some of these plans put to execution. Excellent. So Les, you get to start off with this one. With all of the pressing issues happening, how will you make equity, diversity, and inclusion a priority?
Well, to me it's very basic. It starts with you and I. It starts one person at a time. If we show that we are intolerant of exclusivity, or we're negative towards things that probably are out of our sphere of influence, that's not a good thing. We have to, again, be leaders. We have to throw that shadow out that we do not tolerate exclusivity, and we want to bring in diversity. But trying to set up committees to mandate this doesn't work. It's you and I. Let's just be decent human beings.
So this is a tough question, how to bring in diversity and everything. If you've ever been into my store, you'll probably notice that we actually have a diverse group that come into to the store. And that's because we include everybody and everything equally. I don't think that I've ever discriminated against anybody, and Les is right. It is very difficult to try to make a committee and then try to say that that's not discriminating right there. Basically what we need to do, and what we do a lot, if you've seen the town hall, we do have diversity in there, is just allow everybody in and just hire off of qualifications and just be friends, have some fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, diversity and inclusion, we should be looking at, again, you know, we're talking about festivals and marketing and all these other things. Why would we not have different types of festivals that celebrate all the different groups and diversity within the town? We could easily have, you know, a festival around the arts. We could have a festival around in the park with plays going on and other things. We could also do a food truck festival. We could do, you know, all sorts of different things that would show the diversity of the community and also include everyone. It is a tough question because it does come down to the individual, and we should not walk away from anyone. We should treat everyone equally.
Yes, it is a tough question. First time I was in the council chambers, I asked, what did I think about it? And I looked around and I was like, on the walls, I don't see diversity in the history along these walls, physically on the walls. And where's the Indigenous art? Where's the plaques? Where's those things? So visually is one way we can do it. That's a simple way, you know, visually. We also need to do this culturally, just like how Les was talking, you know, it's between you and I and everyone here. And what was the third one I was thinking about? Vocally, we have to be able to not be afraid to talk about it, to learn about it. Maybe you might not know if you've discriminated against someone or not. Maybe you don't even realize it. That's where we learn from systemic racism, sexism, all that stuff. We have things in our culture that we've been raised in that we don't even realize we're doing. And we can make those things known by education, and we should educate our staff and spread that to the community.
I already told you about how important our stories are, and our stories mean everyone's, not just the prevailing white discourse that seems to take up so much space. So we need to be a little bit uncomfortable and be willing to step aside and make space for some of these other stories. We need to, as a community, actively seek to include those voices and those stories that we haven't been doing. We can do that by commissioning traditionally marginalized groups, but we also need to make sure that we're prioritizing expanding the stories and increasing the variability of the stories. And yeah, bring some humility into it and be willing to accept that, in fact, even if you're a nice person and that you're not trying to discriminate, you probably have. We need to have those conversations where it's okay, and then we can find that new connection where we repair probably damage that we didn't mean to do and build a healthier and stronger community where we're all respected.
Thank you for this important and I think timely question. Now, I represent a diverse family in our community. I am a mother to 3 mixed-race children that we are raising here in Port Hope, so I have a personal vested interest when it comes to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And on the one hand, I am heartened because I think we see a lot more diversity here today than we did even 3, 4, 5 years ago, and I think that's a really positive thing for our community. On the other hand, I recently submitted an inquiry to the municipality on behalf of a resident about the status of the promised Indigenous Cultural Appreciation Strategy, and I was told that staff had written that strategy without engagement or consultation with our Indigenous residents. That sends a signal to me that we have a long way to go in terms of how we approach inclusion and diversity. I would therefore support the establishment of an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee to advise council and staff moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion really amounts to belonging. And if we're going to create a really healthy community, we have to create a community in which people belong, which means we have to be able to see ourselves in the community. In order to do that, we have to be able to give agency and space and voice to those who aren't naturally gifted in. Establishments are often built to favor the people who built them. And that can be a really hard thing for people to understand, especially when they were built by people who look and sound like ourselves, and to recognize that we have to be able to seek out opportunities for those people to have a voice. And as Claire pointed out, in the Indigenous example, it is just furthering the establishment to say, I know what you need next, because I'm the one who created that establishment in the first place.
It somewhat bothers me that we even have to ask that question. When I look out to the people here tonight, my question to myself is, are we not somewhat better than that? Perhaps we're not. I think it's paramount that the municipality have practices that make sure that we're inclusive, that we're diverse, and that we provide with equity. I mean, there are laws for that anyway. But even more so, I think that we have to build a culture within the municipal government, and that culture has to be one where all of these 3 are there, and they're constantly there. One doesn't have to think about it. It's just all a part of who we are. Thank you.
Okay, so equity, diversity, and inclusion. I have worked with many groups through my employ where we had a very large group of people that were that made up all of the different sectors of the business, and that way we could always include everybody. We always had the ability to reach these people, touch them, and say, you know, what's right with this, what's wrong with this. And as I said, it's all about, to me, it's all about communicating with the groups that we need to. Thank you.
Okay, so I see some promising signs around Port Hope, literally signs. I see signs like everybody is welcome in Northumberland. I see signs like every child matters. So there are good things going on. People are getting it, and there is improvement happening. It's slow, it's gradual. The key for me is education. And I think the logical place for us to start as council is with ourselves and with staff, and then spread the education out to the public afterwards beyond that. We also need to be cognizant of the services, and I'm talking about fire, police, ambulance, and things like that. These people have first contact, and my experience working with Toronto Fire is that first contact is not always great. So it's another place where we need to concentrate on the education component. It's about respect. It's as simple as that.
Thank you for all your comments. Adam, we will start with you on this question. Strategic plans are important for communities and organizations. What do you consider to be the top strategic issue for Port Hope as you lead into the next 4 years?
So I guess the top strategic planning right now would be, I guess, into the building for us. So we have the Mason homes going up there. We are trying to build affordable housing. We're looking forward to bringing in more people into our community, and the only way that we can bring more people into our community is by building homes for them. So we need to build a strategic plan on how this is possible without ruining what we have as a municipality. We have a very historic municipality, and it is hard to bring in new developments like the Mason homes without ruining what we have going on. And that is going to take a lot of effort to do. That's all I got for that. Thank you.
Could you repeat that question, please?
So strategic plans are important for communities and organizations. What do you consider to be the top strategic issue for Port Hope as you lead into the next 4 years?
The strategic issue that I see here would be built around the fact that if you look around this room, we are all in the senior range. We do not have a walk-in clinic in this town. We don't have a hospital that's here. We do have health care that's available in Cobourg, but unless you have a family doctor here now, you're going to emergency in Cobourg. I see that as one of the strategic issues. That also falls into our, we also need to look at affordable housing. I was talking to the gentleman here earlier tonight, and we all grew up in our 800 square foot bungalows, and nobody's building those anymore. We need to take a look at that, and that's not a tiny home. It's a house that we all grew up in. We all had lots of space, no matter how many kids were in that house, and I think we need to look in that direction.
So when I sat on a committee, the most annoying word for me was strategic planning. It was almost like we were talking about strategically planning the strategic plan. And there was so much strategic planning that we were strategically planning about that nothing really got done. So that's one strategic strategy that I see in Port Hope, that we are no longer a community that's not paying attention. You know, we have to actually act, and we have to have results. And one of our strategies that we are having a challenge with is, affordable housing and planning and communicating with the community when there is a plan, that the community should know about it, and that we're no longer a community that's, ask for forgiveness before permission, because we all find out about it eventually. So we need to make sure that the public knows, the public's engaged with our strategic plans, that we hear what they want. Sorry.
I've already talked about the importance of housing, so I'll take it in a different direction, which is to up the importance of consultation with all of you. The strategic plan is meant to represent the citizens' interests for the direction of the town, and so that process in developing that new document has to be a consultative one that is led by communication that works. I am not seeing a communication plan from the town that engages its community stakeholders. I'm seeing people ignoring information from the town in the feed, and I'm seeing the town invest quite a lot into some pretty incredible resources that people are not actually using to understand how the town works. So there's a gap there. We need to figure out what the townspeople want, and we need to actually increase the level of engagement so that the strategic plan can work for them.
I think the core strategic issue that we're facing is how we manage for growth in a way that respects our natural environment and enhances our way of life as a community. I'm tired of seeing developers like Aeon Basin Homes just walk all over our official plan, ignoring targets like achieving 25% affordable housing in all new developments, ignoring stipulations that new development should not lead to the deterioration of our natural environment, as will happen when they clear-cut Penman Woods. We need leadership that is going to stand up to developers that seek to fill their pockets instead of advancing our community priorities, and that actively seeks out, partners with, and issues permits to developers who want to work with us to enhance and promote our vision for our future.
I think without a doubt, our top strategic priority is affordable housing. If we think of the Community Economic Development Plan as a wheel, affordable housing is the hub and everything else is a spoke. Everything that we have talked about tonight stems from having proper affordable housing. We've talked about tonight having helping business, which means we need a workforce. How do you attract industry? You need a workforce. We've talked about staff and how we don't have enough staff. Most of our staff can't afford to live here. I happen to be a part of Cornerstone. One of the things that we know to be true is as people are trying to escape domestic abuse, they usually end up going back because there's no affordable living. We talk about tourism. We're not going to get tourists. We don't have people who can be here to help support that. If we can't get out in front of affordable housing, we are not going to get traction on most of the issues that we brought up here tonight.
I sometimes wonder if a strategic plan is just a exercise that every new government goes through for a few weeks and says, here, we've got a brand new strategic plan. I understand and agree with you on the need for affordable housing. My concern is our ability as a municipality to make that work and to make that work with some degree of speed and efficiency. Right now, my biggest concern with respect to strategy for the community is that we have an infrastructure issue. I mean, what we're doing on Walton Street over the next couple of years is just part of what has to go on. This community has abandoned infrastructure changes for decades, and we need to take care of that now. It's not fun, it's not pretty, it's not sexy, but it is absolutely fundamental to growth and development of the community.
Okay, I'm going to touch on the one thing I think that we really need to look at as a strategic plan, and that is to make sure the PHAI makes Port Hope or keeps Port Hope as beautiful as it is. And I want to work with residents, I want to work with businesses to make sure that everything that is done as the remuneration has to happen gets back to being as good as possible, as soon as possible. Because I find that everything that they do or have done seems to take longer than anybody really would like to see it go on for. So I think our biggest priority is going to be working with them to get that stuff completed. Thank you.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about planning issues and housing issues. Those are both very valid. I think what we have to think about is how do we get tough? Port Hope, my experience, lays down to developers, lays down to large industry. We have a good official plan. It has some great things in it. It is completely ignored. Our planning department checks boxes and doesn't look at the big picture. They're not visionaries. So I believe what we need is a planning advisory committee that will be looking at those big issues and providing some advice to both the planning department and to council. We have a lot of really well-trained professional planners and architects in this town that would be only too willing to volunteer their time. We're not making use of the expertise that we have. Thank you.
I want to take us down a different route for a strategic priority. We were unsuccessful in attaining the Wesleyville lands, but that doesn't mean we're dead in the water. It means that we'll have to cooperate with the provincial government in the future. And the vision for those lands was 700 acres in perpetuity of woodlots and streams that would be protected. Our vision was to bring agri-based commercial businesses into that area. Of course, to Claire's point, working with developers that will build the kind of houses under our terms that we could get built. But also, we wanted to use the current Wesleyville buildings for vertical farming 24/7, 365. And we also wanted to put a port into that area to ship our goods to 150 million people down the eastern seaboards, one more thing. And we wanted to bring in a second Ontario food terminal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, for our final question of the evening, Norm, you get to start with this one. So how are you uniquely qualified to fill the role of counselor, and what sets you apart from the other candidates?
Thank you for the question. The thing that sets me apart is I have, as I stated in my brief at the beginning, I have an operational background, and the operational background has led me to service delivery, and it's service delivery across multiple groups. I believe that we have seen in the town, we have seen plans come, we have seen plans go, we have seen surveys done, we've seen all of our committees come up with great ideas, and nothing's happened. They're shelved. They're sitting on a shelf somewhere. There has to be some part of each of those plans that can help us move forward and create a better town of Port Hope. And that's what I see as the main focus for me.
Was it how am I uniquely qualified?
How are you uniquely qualified to fill the role, and what sets you apart from the other candidates?
I have a bit of a unique way of looking at things. I don't know where it comes from, maybe it's creativity, but in my job I have to pay attention to a lot of random details that people don't normally look at. And that gives me an opportunity to have an opportunity that lands on my lap, and then I react quickly. That's one thing that I think I am uniquely qualified to do this. And what sets me apart, I don't know, look at me. I'm not a typical council person. It's my first time doing this, and I'm willing to learn. I'm like a sponge, so give me a chance.
Little known and very embarrassing fact about me, but I used to be a nationally ranked knife salesman. This, in fact, is what makes me unique. I'm really good at selling things. The reason that I'm good at selling things is because I love connecting with people, finding out what is interesting about something, and then finding a way to convince them to come over onto my idea. And so I want to do that for Port Hope. I've demonstrated that I can do that really well in the culture creation space. And these are teachable skills, by the way. My background in education means that I can bring other people into that skill set, and I can share it with other people in Port Hope so that we can sell you more knives, maybe, but definitely so that Port Hope can be better.
Thank you. Listen, I actually believe that my professional background has literally been a training ground for serving you on council. I specialize in community consultation so that we can understand what communities need. I specialize in project design so that we can meet those needs. And I specialize in evaluation so we can understand whether objectives have been met or not so that we can learn and do better next time. That is what I do as a professional, and that's what I will bring to the council table. I I'm pretty friendly. I really actually enjoy talking to people, and I think that's really important because we need the skills, but we also need to bridge divides in our community. And I think that you should be looking at electing councillors who can talk to anyone and anyone in our community. And I believe that I have the personal skills to be able to do that. And I also have the drive and the energy to be able to go out and meet with people wherever they are. Thank you.
I was going to share the little known fact that I was a spoon salesman, but then Miles. But anyways, I believe what qualifies me is, I have an expertise in business development, change management, and similar to Claire, literally what I do for a living is I build cultures of inclusion and belonging. I actually help organizations reach out to people and figure out how to get the best possible ideas and bring them forward. I've been fortunate enough that in my experience to be able to work in all sorts of different areas around mental and physical safety, affordable housing, education, economic development. So I've got a really good breadth and depth of what we're going to be facing over the next 10 years as we roll out our next official plan and figure out where we're going to be heading for not only this generation, but for generations to come.
I suppose that just leaves forks. I think in terms of uniqueness, when I was with the Port Hope Ratepayers Association, I was able to take a look at government from one side of the fence. When I got onto council, I still looked at it from that same side of the fence. And I think that is a uniqueness. When I went out into the community, I would observe what goes on. I saw large buses that went around with nobody in it. So after consultation with many, many people, with staff, we completely changed how we were doing that. Or something like the Barrett Street Bridge. We weren't going to remove that bridge for a while. But with a hard hat and vest, going underneath with engineers, it was clear that that bridge had to be shut down. I brought in the Army to remove it. It was a great time and saved about $85,000 for this community. So I'll say observation and innovation is to me.
What makes me a unique individual to be on council? I've done lots of unique things. I was part of the Restore West Beach Committee where I invited people down to see the environmental impact of a possible construction project that I'm happy to say no longer is a possibility because everybody seemed to see my positive way of looking at things, and the way I presented a positive picture, people joined in and made it part of their vision too, to see West Beach restored and to make it a place where the community can come together. It can be a great magnet to attract people, and it can also be a great place to reconnect people with water, because people that go to beaches understand the environmental impact of that water and its health. Thank you very much.
So I'm going to say what makes me a little different, and I hate to harp on it, but is the emergency background, public service background, and the extensive volunteer background. With the background in emergency services, I met people who were having the worst day of their life every day that I was at work. They were angry, they were scared, they were often injured, sometimes they were abusive, and whether they owned a multi-million-dollar home or whether they were a street person suffering a drug overdose, I had to treat them exactly the same way. I had to treat them with kindness and care and compassion and respect because they are human beings after all. And so I bring that to the council table. As far as my volunteer background, it's extensive. It's put me on a lot of boards and committees. I've sat in a lot of groups that were trying to deal with difficult issues and try to come to a consensus. And so I bring that to the council table as well.
Sorry. I am not only not unique, I don't want to be deemed unique, and I certainly do not want to set myself as set apart from the next council I'm going to have to work with. That just blows all the inclusivity right out the window with two of those statements. Yes, I do offer a certain set of business skills and interpersonal skills, but I think where I'm uniquely unique, if there is such a thing, is with my sense of humor. And you know, it's been a lovely life. I've been blessed, and I just want to have some fun. Yes, we have some tough decisions, but we can do it with some humor.
So what makes me unique? Well, let's see here. Can I get a show of hands to how many people here have met me and have had a conversation with me before? There's a lot of hands there, right? That's what makes me unique. I have connections with people one-on-one. I actually want to hear what people have to say, and then I will go out and do it. Kind of like this weekend coming up. I don't just see a problem and talk about a problem and make a strategy about a problem, whatever. And I don't wait for 3 years to get it done. I actually go out and get things done. So this weekend, we have a problem with our river. We have a problem trying to clean it up. We have fishing line out there that we want to get brought in before it gets into our animals. I actually take action and I get those things done. I think that's what makes me unique. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all of the candidates for coming out tonight. I also want to thank all of you for coming out, and I want to thank Brenda, Siobhan, and the Chamber for putting this on. This has been a spectacular 3 nights of information and education on all of our candidates that are putting their names forward to run in this election. So I will hand it off to Brenda, but thank you, and thank you all.
Respectful of everybody's time, and we know we want to be done by 9 o'clock. Siobhan, put your stop sign down. I just wanted to give you a couple of reminders. Right now, on behalf of the municipality, they are actually collecting public input for the economic development strategy. If you go to the porthope.ca website, you can find the link. If you can't find the link, then please call the Chamber and we will guide you right to it. We'll also have it posted on our own Facebook pages and that kind of stuff. It really is important for you to have a say, for our candidates to have a say, so that we can build our economic development strategy. The other thing I want to remind you of is that you should have received an envelope in the mail today, a lot of you have, with regards to the voting process. It is very different this year. It is not going to a polling station, checking off a box. It is online, it is telephone, or it is through Town Hall. If you have not got your envelope, please be in touch with Town Hall. There are some people who own businesses in this community that aren't even on the voter list. So if you haven't received something, I would say by the end of this week, you should probably be reaching out to Town Hall. Yeah, voteporthope.ca. Oh, to find out if you're on the list, it's votelookup.ca. But there's also voteporthope.ca that explains the entire strategy. Okay? Any more in-depth answers to some of the things that they've talked about, you can find on our chamber.ca website. Thank you all absolutely for coming. Thank you to Jessica for being the moderator this evening. Remember that the election concludes on October 24th, but voting starts October 14th because of the way it's being done through the data system. So pay attention to that, and we look forward to seeing what happens on the ballots and on Election Day, October 24th.